I arrived at the office at 6:30 a.m. on a Monday morning to find my boss, Derek, waiting by my desk with a stern expression on his face. He told me to stop arriving so early because it was making other team members look bad, especially those who arrived at the normal 9 a.m. start time. I had been handling critical morning market reports for 3 years, preparing data that the entire trading floor needed before markets opened. I smiled and agreed to arrive at 9 a.m. starting tomorrow, knowing exactly what would happen next. Tuesday morning felt strange as I deliberately stayed in bed until 7:30 a.m. for the first time in 3 years. I took my time getting ready and even stopped for coffee at the shop around the corner from our building, something I had never done before. Walking into Brennan Financial at exactly 9 a.m. felt like arriving at a completely different company. The trading floor was already buzzing with activity and phones were ringing nonstop, but something was off and I knew exactly what it was. My name is Kristin, and at 32 years old, I had built my entire career at this company. 5 years ago, I started as a junior analyst, fresh from getting my MBA from Northwestern. Within 18 months, I had been promoted to senior analyst and then to lead market analyst just last year. The promotions had not come from playing politics or networking at happy hours, but from pure dedication and an innovation that had saved the company millions of dollars. 3 years ago, I had discovered that our trading team was consistently missing opportunities in the Asian markets because by the time they arrived at 9 a.m., the markets had been open for hours. On my own initiative, I started arriving at 5:30 a.m. to monitor the overnight movements and compile comprehensive reports. Within 2 months, I had developed an automated system that pulled data from 17 different sources and created predictive models for how the U.S. markets would react to Asian market movements. The system was complex but incredibly accurate. I would arrive before dawn and spend 3 hours analyzing data from Tokyo, Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, and Sydney. By 8:30 a.m., I would have a complete report ready that our traders relied on to make their opening positions. This voluntary effort that I never claimed overtime for had prevented countless losses and generated substantial profits for our clients. Derek had been hired 8 months ago as the new director of trading operations. He came with impressive credentials, or so everyone thought, and immediately started making his presence known. He scheduled meetings at odd hours, implemented new procedures that seemed to complicate rather than streamline our work, and constantly talked about optimization and efficiency while producing very little actual work himself. From the beginning, something about Derek had bothered me. He would ask detailed questions about my morning reports during our one-on-one meetings, taking extensive notes and asking me to explain every aspect of my system. At first, I thought he was just being thorough, trying to understand the department he was managing. I had no idea he was studying my work for a completely different reason. As I settled into my desk at 9 a.m. that Tuesday morning, my computer took longer to boot up than usual. When I finally logged in, I noticed something odd in the system logs. Someone had accessed my computer at 7 a.m. that morning, using administrator privileges. The user had downloaded all of my report templates and automated scripts, spending exactly 43 minutes copying files. I pulled up my email and started checking timestamps on messages Derek had sent to the executive team. My blood ran cold as I realized what had been happening. Every morning for the past 6 months, Derek had been forwarding my reports to the CEO, CFO, and board members at 7:15 a.m. with his name as the sender and no mention of my involvement. The subject lines always read Derek's morning market analysis or strategic insights from Derek. The security logs showed a clear pattern. Derek would arrive at 6:45 a.m., use his IT administrative access to log into my computer, remotely download whatever reports I had completed the night before or early that morning, and then present them as his own work in the executive meeting at 8 a.m. He had been building his reputation on my work while I sat in my cubicle, thinking I was just being a dedicated employee. I opened the shared drive where I stored my historical reports and noticed something else. Derek had been modifying the author information on dozens of my documents. Reports I had spent weeks creating now showed him as the creator and last modifier. He had systematically erased my digital fingerprints from my own work. But the real shock came when I discovered an email thread between Derek and someone in HR that he had accidentally left in a shared folder. The emails discussed my excessive early arrivals and whether they constituted a form of time theft since I was not authorized for overtime. Derek was building a case that I was violating company policy by arriving early without permission, despite the fact that I never claimed a single hour of overtime pay. Wednesday morning arrived with a storm, both literal and figurative. Heavy rain pounded against the office windows as I walked in at 9 a.m., sharp to find the trading floor in complete chaos. Phones were ringing frantically and I could see several traders huddled around their screens with panicked expressions. Mark from the derivatives desk spotted me and practically ran over. "Kristin, thank God you're here," he said, his face flushed with stress. "We've been trying to reach you since 7 a.m. The Nikkei dropped 400 points overnight and we had no warning. We're down $2.3 million already because we had positions that should have been hedged. Where's the morning report?" I glanced at my watch and responded calmly that I needed at least 3 hours to compile the data properly, since I was no longer arriving early per Derek's direct orders. Mark's jaw dropped as he processed this information. Before he could respond, Derek's voice boomed across the floor, demanding I come to his office immediately. The walk to Derek's corner office felt like a march to an execution, but not for the reason he thought. I had spent the previous evening documenting everything I had discovered and sending copies to my personal email with detailed timestamps. As I entered his office, he slammed the door behind me hard enough to make the glass walls shake. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted, his face red with anger. "The entire trading floor is in chaos, and you're sitting at your desk doing nothing. I need those reports now." I maintained my composure and reminded him that he had specifically instructed me to stop arriving early because it was making other employees look bad. I explained that generating comprehensive market analysis for 17 international markets required a minimum of 3 hours, and since I now arrived at 9 a.m. like everyone else, the reports would be ready by noon at the earliest. Derek's anger shifted to something that looked almost like panic. He started pacing behind his desk, running his hands through his hair. "You know how critical those reports are," he said, trying a different approach. "Can't you just this once come in early tomorrow? We can't afford another morning like this." I pretended to consider his request, then shook my head. "I'm sorry, Derek, but you were very clear that my early arrivals were creating a negative environment for the team. I wouldn't want to go against your direct orders. Besides, Sarah from HR mentioned yesterday that you've been documenting my early arrivals as potential time theft. I certainly don't want to give you more ammunition for that case." The color drained from Derek's face when I mentioned Sarah. He had not expected me to know about his conversations with HR. He tried to stammer out a response, but I continued talking. "I ran into Tom from IT yesterday," I said, casually, watching his reaction. "He mentioned you've been having some interesting conversations about outsourcing market analysis to a consulting firm. Something about a $400,000 annual contract. That seems expensive considering I do the same work as part of my regular salary." Derek's panic was now clearly visible. He grabbed his phone and started scrolling through his contacts. "This conversation is over," he said tersely. "Get back to work and have those reports ready by noon." As I left his office, I noticed him making a frantic phone call. Through the glass walls, I could see him gesturing wildly as he spoke. Several employees had noticed the commotion and were watching with interest. The story of the missing morning reports had already spread throughout the floor, and people were starting to connect the dots. Thursday brought more chaos. Without my early morning analysis, the trading team made several bad calls, resulting in another $1.8 million in losses. The situation was becoming impossible to hide from upper management. I overheard Derek on a conference call trying to explain the sudden downturn in performance, but his explanations were vague and unconvincing. That afternoon, Tom from IT stopped by my desk with a concerned expression. He pulled up a chair and lowered his voice. "Kristin, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I think you need to know. Derek has been in my office 3 times this week, demanding administrator access to your computer. He says he needs to audit your files for compliance reasons, but something doesn't smell right." I thanked Tom for the warning and asked if he could do me a favor. Could he pull the access logs from my computer for the past 8 months? Tom nodded and said he would email them to me by end of day. What he sent me 2 hours later was even worse than I had imagined. The logs showed Derek had accessed my computer 212 times in 8 months, always between 6:45 and 7:30 a.m. He had downloaded over 3,000 files, including personal documents, client correspondence, and proprietary analysis methods I had developed. But most disturbing was a folder he had created called Transition Planning, which contained drafts of job descriptions that perfectly matched my responsibilities but required only 5 years of experience instead of my 7. In one document, Derek had outlined a plan to eliminate my position by the end of the quarter and transfer all responsibilities to his brother's consulting firm, Strategic Market Solutions. The proposal promised 24/7 coverage and advanced analytical capabilities that were literally copy-pasted descriptions from my own performance reviews. He was planning to fire me and then sell my own work back to the company at an inflated price. But Derek had made a crucial mistake. In his haste to steal my work, he had not noticed that my automated systems included hidden watermarks in the code. Every report generated by my programs contained encrypted timestamps and user identifications that could not be removed without breaking the entire system. I had implemented this feature 2 years ago after a previous colleague had tried to take credit for my work. These watermarks would prove definitively that Derek had been stealing my intellectual property. Friday morning arrived with an unusual chill in the air, and I could feel something significant was about to happen as I deliberately took my time getting ready. I had my usual breakfast, watched the morning news, and even called my mother for a brief chat, all while my phone sat silent on the counter. I had turned it off the night before, knowing what was coming. At exactly 9 a.m., I walked through the main entrance of Brennan Financial and powered on my phone. The screen immediately lit up with notification after notification. 44 missed calls, all from Derek, starting at 6:45 a.m. and becoming increasingly frequent as the morning progressed. There were also 17 text messages, each more frantic than the last, and 12 voicemails that I did not need to listen to in order to understand their content. The security guard at the front desk looked at me with wide eyes. "Miss Kristin, thank goodness you're here, Mr. Derek has been down here 3 times looking for you." He seemed extremely upset about something. I thanked him and made my way to the elevator, moving at a deliberately unhurried pace. As the doors opened on the 32nd floor, I was greeted by a scene of barely controlled pandemonium. The entire trading floor was in crisis mode, with people shouting across desks, phones ringing constantly, and multiple screens showing red numbers that indicated massive losses. Jennifer from the Asian markets desk spotted me first and practically sprinted over. "Kristin, where have you been?" The Hong Kong market crashed overnight and triggered a cascade across all Asian exchanges. We had no warning, and our biggest client, Wellington Investments, just lost $8 million. They're threatening to pull their entire portfolio. Before I could respond, Derek appeared from behind a partition, his face a mask of rage and desperation. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie was loose, and there were visible sweat stains on his expensive shirt. He grabbed my arm, which I calmly but firmly removed from his grip, and started shouting loud enough for the entire floor to hear. "Where the hell were you? I've been calling you since 6:45. Do you have any idea what you've done? Wellington is our biggest client, and they're going to sue us into bankruptcy because of your incompetence. You deliberately sabotaged this company." I stood perfectly still, maintaining eye contact with him while speaking in a calm, clear voice that carried across the now silent trading floor. Every employee had stopped what they were doing to watch this confrontation unfold. "Derek, I arrived at exactly 9 a.m. as you instructed. On Monday, you specifically told me to stop arriving early because it was making other employees look bad. I have your directive in writing, which I forwarded to HR for documentation. I am simply following your direct orders as any good employee should." Derek's face turned an even deeper shade of red. "Don't play games with me. You know those reports are critical. You've been doing them for 3 years. "Yes, I have been doing them voluntarily for 3 years," I replied, ensuring everyone could hear me clearly. I arrived at 5:30 a.m. every day without claiming overtime because I believed in supporting this team. But you made it clear that my initiative was problematic, so I adjusted my schedule according to your management preferences. At that moment, the elevator dinged, and Margaret Walsh, our CEO, stepped onto the trading floor. She was a woman in her late 50s with silver hair always pulled back in a perfect bun, and a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. She had built Brennan Financial from a small boutique firm into a major player in the investment world, and she did not tolerate incompetence or dishonesty. Her presence immediately commanded attention. She surveyed the chaos on the trading floor with sharp eyes before focusing on Derek and me. Would someone like to explain why I just got off a call with Wellington's CEO, who is threatening to not only pull their portfolio but also report us to the SEC for gross negligence? Derek immediately launched into an explanation, trying to shift blame. Margaret, it's a complete failure of our analysis team. Kristin has been deliberately withholding critical market reports, causing massive losses. I've been trying to reach her all morning, but she's been completely unresponsive. Margaret's gaze shifted to me. Miss Kristin, is this accurate? I took a breath and spoke clearly. Miss Walsh, I arrived at 9 a.m. this morning as instructed by Derek on Monday. For the past 3 years, I have been voluntarily arriving at 5:30 a.m. to prepare comprehensive market analysis reports covering 17 international markets. These reports have prevented countless losses and generated substantial returns for our clients. Derek instructed me to stop arriving early because he felt it was making other team members look bad. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly. You've been arriving at 5:30 a.m. voluntarily? For 3 years. Yes, ma'am. I developed an automated system that monitors overnight market movements and creates predictive models for U.S. market reactions. I've never claimed overtime for this work because I believed it was simply part of doing my job well. Margaret turned to Derek with an expression that could freeze water. Derek, you've been sending me exceptional morning reports for the past 6 months. Reports that arrive in my inbox at 7:15 a.m. with comprehensive analysis that I've praised in multiple board meetings. Are you telling me you're not aware of Miss Kristin's early morning work? Derek started stammering, trying to find an explanation, but Margaret held up her hand for silence. She looked directly at him with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of suspicion and growing anger. Derek, I want you to do something for me right now. Log into your computer and show me how you generate one of those morning reports. Just walk me through the process of pulling the data from our various sources and creating the analysis. It should be simple since you've been doing it every morning for 6 months. The color completely drained from Derek's face. He stood frozen for a moment, then started making excuses about proprietary methods and complex systems that would take too long to explain. Margaret's expression grew colder with each word. It's interesting. Margaret said slowly that you can't show me a process you supposedly perform daily. Miss Kristin, would you be able to demonstrate how these reports are generated? I nodded and moved to the nearest computer. Within minutes, I had logged into my systems and pulled up the automated dashboard I had created. I showed Margaret how data flowed from multiple international sources, how my algorithms processed the information, and how the predictive models generated actionable intelligence for our traders. I explained the watermarking system I had embedded in the code and pulled up the metadata, showing that every report Derek had sent her contained my digital signature. Margaret's expression transformed from cold suspicion to genuine fury. She turned to Derek, who was backing away slowly, as if physical distance could somehow protect him from what was about to happen. Derek, my office now, she said in a voice that brooked no argument. Then she turned to me with a completely different expression, something almost approaching respect. Miss Kristin, please gather all documentation related to your morning reports and bring it to my office in 30 minutes. I believe we have much to discuss. Monday morning arrived with an energy in the office that felt electric, like the moments before lightning strikes. I had spent the weekend organizing 3 years' worth of documentation, timestamps, system logs, and email trails into a comprehensive package that told the complete story of Derek's deception. As I walked onto the trading floor at 8 a.m., having been specifically requested by Margaret to return to my original schedule. I noticed several people I did not recognize sitting in the conference room with boxes of documents, multiple laptops. Margaret had not wasted any time. She had brought in a team of forensic accountants from Ernst & Young to conduct a thorough investigation into Derek's activities. The lead investigator, a woman named Patricia Chen, introduced herself to me with a firm handshake and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of Margaret herself. "Miss Kristin will need you to walk us through everything," Patricia said as she set up her laptop. "Every interaction with Derek, every piece of evidence you've collected, and most importantly, we need to understand the full scope of your contributions to this company that may have been misappropriated." For the next 4 hours, I sat with the investigation team going through document after document. I showed them the IT logs Tom had provided, revealing Derek's 212 unauthorized accesses to my computer. I presented the emails showing how he had forwarded my reports as his own work. I demonstrated the watermarking system that proved definitively that every analysis Derek had claimed credit for contained my digital signature. But the investigation quickly expanded beyond just my situation. Patricia's team discovered that Derek had been systematically stealing work from multiple employees across different departments. Jennifer from marketing came forward with evidence that Derek had taken her comprehensive campaign strategies and presented them to the board as his own innovative ideas. She had emails showing Derek asking her for detailed explanations of her methods under the guise of performance reviews, only to see her exact presentations appear in board meetings with his name attached. Michael from risk management revealed that Derek had been claiming credit for a new risk assessment model that Michael had spent 6 months developing. The model had saved the company over $15 million in potential losses, but Derek had received a substantial bonus for this innovation, while Michael had gotten only a standard performance review. By Tuesday afternoon, the investigation had uncovered something even more disturbing. Derek had been billing the company for overtime hours that other employees had worked but never claimed. The forensic accountants found that Derek had submitted timesheets claiming he had worked over 900 hours of overtime in the past 8 months. The total amount he had collected was just over $50,000. Patricia called me into the conference room with a grim expression. "Miss Kristin, what we're finding goes beyond simple theft of intellectual property. This appears to be systematic fraud. We need to understand the full scope of what Derek was planning." I provided her with the documents I had found regarding Derek's brother's consulting firm Strategic Market Solutions. The proposal to eliminate my position and outsource the work for $400,000 annually was just the beginning. The investigation team discovered that Strategic Market Solutions was not just owned by Derek's brother, it was partially owned by Derek himself through a shell company registered in Delaware. The plan was elegant in its corruption. Derek would fire the employees whose work he had been stealing, claim their contributions as his own innovations, then outsource their responsibilities to his own company at inflated rates. He would essentially be selling the company its own intellectual property while collecting both his salary and the consulting fees. Wednesday brought even more shocking revelations. The background check that should have been performed when Derek was hired had been mysteriously incomplete. Patricia's team did their own investigation and discovered that Derek's claimed MBA from Harvard Business School was actually from Hartford Business School, an online diploma mill that had been shut down for fraud 2 years ago. His previous position at a prestigious investment firm in Boston turned out to be at a company owned by his father that had existed for only 18 months before declaring bankruptcy under suspicious circumstances. The glowing references that had gotten him hired at Brennan Financial were all from email addresses that traced back to Derek himself using various aliases. But the most damaging discovery came from our receptionist Amanda, who had been keeping her own records. She approached the investigation team with a folder of handwritten notes documenting Derek's behavior over the past 8 months. She had dates, times, and direct quotes of Derek making discriminatory comments about female employees. He said women like Kristin work too hard to compensate for their natural weakness. Amanda read from her notes. He said female employees are too emotional to handle real pressure, and that's why they need to arrive early to keep up with men who can do the same work more efficiently. Amanda had also documented several instances of Derek making inappropriate comments about female colleagues' appearances and suggesting that certain women had only been promoted because of their looks rather than their abilities. She had reported these incidents to Derek's predecessor in HR, but that person had left the company shortly after Derek arrived under circumstances that now seemed suspicious. Thursday afternoon, Margaret called an emergency meeting with all senior staff. Derek was conspicuously absent, having been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation's conclusion. Margaret stood at the head of the conference room table with an expression of controlled fury that made everyone sit a little straighter in their chairs. What we've uncovered in the past week is a systematic pattern of fraud, deception, and theft that goes beyond anything I've encountered in 30 years of running this company, she began. Derek has not only stolen intellectual property from multiple employees, but has also defrauded this company of substantial funds while creating a hostile work environment, particularly for our female employees. She went on to explain that the investigation was now being handled not just internally but by external authorities as well. The Securities and Exchange Commission had been notified about potential insider trading violations. The FBI was investigating the wire fraud aspects of Derek's scheme, particularly the fraudulent overtime claims and the planned outsourcing to his own company. But Margaret was not just focused on Derek. She was furious that the system had allowed this to happen. "We failed as a company," she said, looking each senior manager in the eye. "We failed to protect our employees' contributions. We failed to verify credentials properly. We failed to create an environment where people felt safe reporting problems. This stops now." The investigation team's final report that week was devastating for Derek but validating for those of us who had been his victims. They calculated that the intellectual property Derek had stolen would have been worth over $3 million if properly licensed. The fraudulent overtime claims were just the tip of the iceberg. Derek had also been expensing personal purchases as business expenses, including a $15,000 watch he claimed was for client entertainment, and multiple trips to Vegas that he had documented as investment conferences. By Friday morning, the full scope of Derek's crimes was clear. He had committed wire fraud, identity theft, intellectual property theft, and potentially insider trading. The FBI had frozen his assets, including a $2 million beach house he had recently purchased in the Hamptons. It turned out the down payment for that house had come from a suspicious consulting fee paid by one of our competitor firms for market intelligence that looked remarkably similar to our proprietary trading strategies. The following Wednesday, I arrived at the office to find something extraordinary happening. A banner hung across the trading floor that read, "We Stand with Kristin," and my desk was covered with flowers, cards, and coffee gift certificates from colleagues I had barely spoken to before. The entire culture of the office had shifted from one of silent competition to unexpected solidarity. Mark from the derivatives desk had organized a petition that already had 142 signatures. The petition detailed how my morning reports had saved not just money but careers. Traders shared specific instances where my analysis had prevented catastrophic losses that would have resulted in terminations. One entry from a junior trader named David particularly stood out. He wrote that my reports had helped him identify a market manipulation scheme that could have cost him his license if he had unknowingly participated. The petition was more than just support, it was documentation. Each signatory had included specific examples of how my work had impacted their success. The cumulative effect was a comprehensive record showing that my voluntary efforts had generated over $40 million in profits and prevented twice that amount in losses over 3 years. The trading floor had essentially created an independent valuation of my contributions that no forensic accountant could dispute. Tom from IT had gone even further. He had spent his own time creating a complete technical analysis of my automated systems, documenting every innovation and calculating the man-hours it would take to replicate my work. His report showed that my systems performed the equivalent of 4 full-time analysts' worth of work every morning. At market rates, this represented a value of $600,000 annually that I had been providing for free. But the most powerful ally emerged from an unexpected source. Margaret's executive assistant Barbara, who had worked at the company for 20 years, approached me privately with a box of documents. She had been keeping her own records of Derek's activities, including recordings of meetings where he had explicitly taken credit for others' work. "I've seen executives come and go," Barbara said quietly, "but I've never seen anything like Derek. He was a cancer in this organization. I started recording meetings after I heard him lie about a report I knew you had created. I thought someone should have proof." The recordings were damning. In one, Derek explicitly stated that he had developed the morning report system himself, claiming it was based on his experience at Harvard Business School. In another, he discussed plans to fire what he called the redundant analysis team once he had extracted all their methodologies. Most shocking was a recording where he told another executive that women in finance were only good for detail work, not strategic thinking, and that he planned to rebuild his department with what he called real talent, meaning men from his network. Thursday brought another unexpected development. 3 of our major competitors reached out to me directly with job offers. Somehow, news of my situation had spread throughout the industry. Goldman Sachs offered me a position as Vice President of Market Intelligence with a base salary of $350,000. Morgan Stanley countered with a similar position plus a signing bonus of $100,000. But the most intriguing offer came from a startup hedge fund that offered me equity partnership and complete autonomy to build my own team. When Margaret learned about these offers, she called me into her office immediately. For the first time since I had known her, she looked genuinely worried. "Kristin, I know you have every reason to leave," she began. "What Derek did was unforgivable, and the fact that it happened under my watch is my responsibility. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to make this right." She laid out a proposal that exceeded anything I had imagined. A promotion to Senior Director of Market Analysis with a base salary of $275,000, full back pay for 3 years of unclaimed overtime, calculated at time and a half, which came to nearly $200,000. A percentage of any revenue generated from licensing my analytical systems to other firms. And most importantly, a seat on the executive committee where my voice would help shape company policy. "But that's not all," Margaret continued. "I want you to help me rebuild this company's culture. I want you to lead a task force on innovation recognition, ensuring that every employee's contributions are properly documented and rewarded. No one should ever again feel that their work can be stolen with impunity." Friday afternoon, the entire office was called to an all-hands meeting. Margaret stood at the podium with an expression of determination I had not seen before. She announced a complete restructuring of company policies. The Kristin Protocol, as she called it, would require all innovations and intellectual property to be formally documented with clear attribution. Any supervisor claiming credit for a subordinate's work would face immediate termination. A new anonymous reporting system would be implemented for any concerns about work appropriation or discrimination. But the most dramatic moment came when she addressed Derek's status. "Mr. Derek Thompson has been terminated for cause effective immediately," she announced. "His actions constitute gross misconduct, fraud, and violation of federal law. We are cooperating fully with the FBI and SEC investigations. Any employee who has experienced similar treatment from Mr. Thompson or any other supervisor should report it immediately with my personal guarantee of protection from retaliation." The room erupted in applause, something I had never witnessed in 5 years at the company. People who had suffered in silence were finally being heard. Over the next hours, 17 more employees came forward with stories of Derek's misconduct, ranging from stolen work to inappropriate comments to suspicious requests for proprietary information. The security footage that Amanda had insisted on preserving revealed even more. Derek had been meeting with representatives from Hartman Investments, our biggest competitor, in the parking garage after hours. He had been photographing confidential documents and appeared to be exchanging USB drives for envelopes that looked suspiciously like cash payments. The FBI later confirmed these envelopes contained $50,000 in payments for insider information. But the biggest shock came from an unexpected source. Derek's executive assistant Sandra, who everyone had assumed was loyal to him, walked into Margaret's office with a laptop and a terrified expression. She had been documenting everything for months, creating what she called an insurance policy. She had emails showing Derek instructing her to forge documents, recordings of him discussing illegal activities, and most damaging, a complete record of every file he had stolen from every employee. Sandra had been terrified to come forward earlier because Derek had threatened her job and implied he had connections that could destroy her career. But seeing the company rally around me gave her the courage to speak up. Her documentation became crucial evidence that would later ensure Derek's conviction on multiple federal charges. Monday morning arrived with the kind of dramatic tension usually reserved for movie climaxes. I pulled into the parking garage at 7 a.m. to find it unusually full for that hour. Several black SUVs with government plates were parked near the entrance, and I recognized FBI agents stationed at various points throughout the building. Today was the day Derek would face the consequences of his actions. I had been asked to arrive early to assist the authorities with identifying certain documents and explaining the technical aspects of my systems that Derek had stolen. As I entered the building, Agent Sarah Mitchell, who was leading the FBI investigation, greeted me with a professional nod. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and an air of competence that reminded me why federal investigators have such formidable reputations. "Miss Kristin, we appreciate your cooperation," she said as we walked toward the elevator. "Your documentation has been invaluable. We've uncovered a pattern of criminal behavior that extends far beyond Brennan Financial. Mr. Thompson has been running similar schemes at multiple companies over the past decade." Derek arrived at 9 a.m. exactly, probably thinking he was coming in for another day of administrative leave. Instead, he was met in the lobby by Agent Mitchell and her team, who presented him with arrest warrants for wire fraud, embezzlement, intellectual property theft, and securities fraud. The look on his face when he saw the handcuffs was a mixture of shock and indignation that quickly transformed into desperate panic. "This is ridiculous!" Derek shouted as they read him his rights. "In being set up, Kristin orchestrated all of this because she was jealous of my success. You're arresting the wrong person." His protests grew louder as they led him through the lobby in full view of every employee who had arrived for the morning shift. Word had spread quickly, and people lined the windows of every floor to watch Derek's perp walk. Someone had even alerted the media, and news vans were already gathering outside. But Derek's humiliation was far from over. As he was being escorted to the FBI vehicle, a silver Mercedes pulled up and a woman in her 40s stepped out. It was Derek's wife, Michelle, and she was carrying a manila envelope that I recognized as legal documents. She walked directly up to Derek, ignoring the FBI agents, and handed him the envelope. "Divorce papers," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I know about Amanda. I know about the money you stole. I know about all of it. My lawyer will be in touch." Derek's face went white. "Michelle, wait. You don't understand. Amanda means nothing. She was just Amanda from Hartman Investments." Michelle interrupted. "The woman you've been having an affair with for 6 months? The one you bought jewelry for using the company credit card?" "Oh, Derek, I know exactly who Amanda is. Or should I say Agent Amanda Rodriguez from the Securities and Exchange Commission, who's been investigating you for insider trading." The revelation that Derek's mistress was actually an undercover SEC investigator sent shockwaves through the crowd that had gathered. Derek stood there with his mouth open, unable to form words, as the full scope of his downfall became clear. He had been providing insider information to someone he thought was a competitor's executive, but who was actually a federal agent, gathering evidence of his crimes. Michelle turned to address the growing crowd. "I've already frozen our joint accounts through my attorney. The house, the cars, the boat, everything purchased with stolen money will be returned to its rightful owners. I won't be associated with a criminal." She walked back to her car without looking back, leaving Derek standing there in handcuffs with his life in ruins. As the FBI drove Derek away, Margaret called an emergency meeting on the trading floor. She stood where Derek had berated me just days earlier and addressed the entire company. "Today marks the end of a dark chapter in our company's history," she began. "But it also marks the beginning of something better. Effective immediately, Kristin Peters is promoted to Senior Director of Market Analysis with full autonomy over her department. She will also serve on our executive committee, where her voice will help ensure that what happened with Derek never happens again. The announcement of my promotion was met with genuine applause from my colleagues. But Margaret was not finished. She announced that the company would be paying me full back pay for 3 years of unclaimed overtime, which after taxes would amount to roughly $180,000. Additionally, any systems or innovations I had created would be properly patented in my name with royalty agreements for any external licensing. Furthermore, Margaret continued, we've discovered that Mr. Thompson's theft extended to many of you. Each affected employee will receive compensation for stolen work and appropriate recognition in their personnel files. Promotions and bonuses that were denied because Mr. Thompson took credit for your achievements will be reconsidered. Over the next several days, the full extent of Derek's criminal network was exposed. His brother's consulting firm Strategic Market Solutions was raided by federal agents who discovered it was a front for a larger fraud operation. The company had no actual employees besides Derek's brother and had been created solely to siphon money from companies where Derek had planted himself. The investigation revealed that Derek and his brother had run this scam at 4 different companies over 8 years, stealing an estimated $12 million in intellectual property and fraudulent consulting fees. They had left a trail of damaged careers and financial losses across the financial industry. 3 other companies came forward with similar stories of Derek infiltrating their organizations, stealing employee innovations, and attempting to outsource work to his brother's firm. Derek's father's company, which had provided his fake references, was also investigated. The audit revealed years of tax evasion and money laundering. The company that had supposedly employed Derek as a senior executive had never actually had him on the payroll. They had simply provided false employment verification in exchange for a cut of Derek's fraudulent earnings. The entire family appeared to be involved in a multi-generation white-collar crime operation. By Thursday, Derek's complete financial picture emerged. He had been living entirely on stolen money and debt. The $2 million beach house in the Hamptons had been purchased with a down payment that came directly from selling our proprietary trading algorithms to competitors. His luxury cars were leased using fraudulent financial statements. Even his country club membership had been obtained using forged documents showing inflated assets. The FBI discovered that Derek had been maintaining 3 separate identities with different social security numbers. He had credit cards and bank accounts under each identity, which he used to move money around and avoid detection. Agent Mitchell told me they had never seen such an elaborate scheme from someone who was not part of organized crime. But the most satisfying revelation came from the SEC investigation. Agent Amanda Rodriguez, who had been posing as Derek's mistress, had recorded hundreds of hours of conversations where Derek explicitly discussed his crimes. He had bragged about stealing my work, calling me a naive workaholic who made it easy for him. He had detailed his plans to eliminate entire departments and replace them with his brother's firm. He had even discussed plans to eventually take over as CEO by systematically undermining Margaret with the board of directors. The recordings also revealed Derek's deep-seated misogyny. He repeatedly stated that women in finance were only there to fill diversity quotas and that none of them had the intellectual capacity for real strategic thinking. He described his plan to rebuild the entire company with what he called proper talent, meaning men from his network of similar-minded individuals. The SEC had enough evidence not just for insider trading but for creating a hostile work environment that violated multiple federal employment laws. Friday brought Derek's arraignment at the federal courthouse. Margaret had given anyone who wanted to attend the afternoon off, and nearly 60 employees made the trip to witness Derek face justice. He stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, a far cry from his expensive suits, looking haggard and defeated. The charges were read one by one: 14 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of identity theft, 23 counts of intellectual property theft, 11 counts of securities fraud, 4 counts of embezzlement. The judge set bail at $5 million, which Derek could not pay since all his assets had been frozen. As Derek was led away in shackles, he made eye contact with me for just a moment. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been regret, or might have simply been self-pity. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only relief that justice was being served, and that no one else would suffer from his schemes. 6 months have passed since that dramatic Monday when Derek was arrested, and I can barely recognize the company I now help lead. The trading floor that once hummed with underlying tension and competition has transformed into a space of genuine collaboration and innovation. My office, which sits where Derek's used to be, has become a symbol of the company's commitment to recognizing and rewarding true talent, regardless of who creates it. Every morning I still arrive early, though. Now it's by choice rather than necessity. I come in around 7 a.m. not because I have to, but because I genuinely enjoy the quiet hours when I can think strategically about our market position and develop new analytical models. The difference is that now I have a team of 15 brilliant analysts who share my passion for market intelligence and who receive full credit for their contributions. The morning reports that I once produced alone in darkness have evolved into something far more powerful. My team has expanded the coverage from 17 to 31 international markets, and our predictive accuracy has increased by 40%. We've developed machine learning algorithms that can detect market manipulation patterns, something that would have prevented Derek from selling our information if Wed had it earlier. Every innovation is properly documented, credited, and compensated. Derek is currently serving 3 to 5 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testifying against his brother and father. His brother received 7 years for running the fraudulent consulting firm, and his father got 4 years for tax evasion and money laundering. The network of corruption they had built over decades has been completely dismantled. The beach house in the Hamptons was seized by the government and sold at auction with the proceeds going to victim restitution. Derek's wife Michelle received nothing in the divorce since all their assets were deemed proceeds of criminal activity. She has since rebuilt her life and actually sent me a letter thanking me for inadvertently revealing the truth about her husband. She's now working as a paralegal specializing in financial fraud cases. Strategic Market Solutions, the consulting firm Derek's brother ran, has become a case study in business schools as an example of corporate fraud. The FBI uses it as a training example for identifying shell companies designed to defraud corporations. The $400,000 contract Derek had tried to arrange would have been just the beginning. Documents found during the raid showed plans to expand the fraud to dozens of companies using the same playbook. Brennan Financial has not just recovered from the Derek scandal, but has thrived in its aftermath. The Kristin protocol, which Margaret implemented, has become an industry model for protecting intellectual property and ensuring proper attribution. 3 other major investment firms have licensed our framework, and we've been invited to present at conferences on creating ethical corporate cultures. The protocol requires that all innovations be logged in a blockchain-based system that creates an immutable record of who created what and when. Any use of an employee's work must be credited, and significant contributions trigger automatic compensation reviews. Managers are evaluated not just on their own performance, but on how well they develop and recognize their team members. The cultural shift has been remarkable. Our client Wellington Investments, which had threatened to leave after losing $8 million, has not only stayed but increased their portfolio by 50%. They were impressed by how quickly and transparently we handled the crisis. The CEO told Margaret that our response to the Derek situation convinced him that Brennan Financial had the integrity to manage their assets long-term. The morning report system I developed has been turned into a product that we now license to smaller investment firms that can't afford full analytical teams. It generates $2 million annually in licensing fees, of which I receive a 15% royalty as the creator. This passive income stream alone exceeds my previous salary, and it continues to grow as more firms adopt the system. My team has become known as the best market analysis group on Wall Street. We've had 0 turnover in 6 months because everyone knows their work will be recognized and rewarded. 3 of my analysts have already been promoted based on innovations they've developed, and 2 more are working on projects that could revolutionize how we assess market risk. Tom from IT has become our Chief Technology Officer, a promotion that was long overdue. His investigation into Derek's unauthorized access led to a complete overhaul of our security systems. We now have some of the most sophisticated intellectual property protections in the industry. He jokes that Derek did us a favor by exposing our vulnerabilities before a more competent criminal could exploit them. Sarah from HR, who Derek tried to manipulate into building a case against me, has become our head of employee relations. She implemented an anonymous reporting system that has already identified and resolved 12 cases of work appropriation and 4 cases of discrimination. The culture of silence that allowed Derek to operate has been replaced with open communication and accountability. Jennifer from marketing, whose campaigns Derek stole, received a retroactive bonus of $50,000 and a promotion to marketing director. She's now running campaigns that have increased our client acquisition by 35%. More importantly, she's mentoring junior employees and ensuring they receive credit for their ideas from day one. The industry recognition has been overwhelming. I was invited to speak at the Global Finance Summit about building ethical analytical frameworks. Forbes featured me in their article about rising female leaders in finance. But the recognition that meant the most came from my colleagues who voted me Employee of the Year, not for my analytical work, but for standing up to corruption even when it seemed risky. Margaret and I meet weekly now to discuss not just market strategies, but company culture. She's committed to ensuring that what happened with Derek never happens again. We've instituted background checks that actually verify credentials and employment history. We've created clear policies on intellectual property and work attribution. Most importantly, we've built a culture where people feel safe speaking up when something is wrong. The financial impact of my work is now properly quantified. An independent audit showed that my morning reports and analytical systems have generated over $120 million in profits and prevented losses over the past 3 years. This documentation has been useful not just for compensation discussions, but for showing other employees that their contributions have measurable value that should be recognized. My personal life has also transformed. The stress of working under Derek while watching him steal my work had affected me more than I realized. Now I sleep better, work more creative hours, and have energy for activities outside the office. I've started mentoring young women in finance, teaching them not just analytical techniques, but how to document and protect their work. The lesson I've learned from this experience is profound yet simple. Integrity and consistent work will ultimately prevail over deception and shortcuts. Derek thought he was clever, stealing others' work and building his reputation on lies. But lies require constant maintenance, and eventually the structure collapses. My work spoke for itself through the watermarks I embedded and the systems that bore my digital signature even when Derek tried to claim them. I've also learned the importance of documentation and self-advocacy. For too long, I believed that good work would naturally be recognized. I thought arriving early and working hard would speak for itself. But in a world where Derek types exist, we must be vigilant about protecting our contributions and ensuring proper attribution. The watermarks I embedded were never about distrust but about professional prudence, and they saved my career. Most importantly, I've learned that standing up to injustice, even when it seems risky, can inspire others to do the same. When I complied with Derek's order to stop arriving early, I thought I was taking a massive risk. But that act of malicious compliance exposed his fraud and gave courage to dozens of other employees who had been suffering in silence. Sometimes the best response to a toxic person is not confrontation but simply allowing them to experience the consequences of their own demands. Looking back at that Monday morning when Derek told me to stop arriving early, I realize it was the best thing that could have happened. His attempt to diminish my contribution became the catalyst for exposing years of fraud. His insistence that I was making others look bad revealed that he was the one who couldn't perform without stealing others' work. His own arrogance became his downfall. The company has committed to paying for me to get my PhD in financial engineering, which I'll complete while continuing my role. My dissertation will focus on ethical frameworks for attribution in collaborative financial environments, essentially turning the Derek experience into academic research that could help prevent similar situations across the industry. 3 competitors still regularly try to recruit me, but I've chosen to stay at Brennan Financial. This company gave me the opportunity to build something meaningful, and when crisis came, Margaret stood by me and made things right. That kind of integrity is rare in finance and worth more than any salary increase. Besides, I'm now part of building something larger than myself, a culture where innovation is celebrated and properly attributed. Every morning when I walk past the trading floor and see my team collaborating openly, sharing ideas without fear of theft, I'm reminded that positive change is possible. The Derek era taught us all valuable lessons about vigilance, documentation, and the importance of speaking up. But more than that, it showed us that a company culture based on recognition and respect will always outperform one based on deception and theft. My story has become something of a legend in financial circles. I regularly receive emails from analysts at other firms asking for advice on dealing with their own Derek situations. I always tell them the same thing. Document everything, protect your work with technical safeguards, and never be afraid to let toxic people experience the consequences of their own demands. Sometimes the best way to fight back is to simply step aside and let someone's own dishonesty destroy them. The morning reports continue to evolve. We're now using quantum computing models to analyze market patterns that were previously invisible. We're predicting market movements with an accuracy that seemed impossible just a year ago. And every innovation is properly credited to the team member who created it. Their names appear on patents, papers, and presentations. Their contributions are celebrated, not stolen. Derek's story serves as a cautionary tale that we share with every new hire. We tell them about the executive who thought he could build a career on stolen work only to lose everything when his deception was exposed. We show them the systems we've built to prevent such theft, and more importantly, we demonstrate through our actions that genuine contribution will always be recognized and rewarded. As I sit in my office this morning watching the sunrise over the city, I can see my reflection in the window, and I hardly recognize the person I've become. 6 months ago, I was an analyst whose work was being stolen by a narcissistic boss. Today, I'm a senior director helping to reshape how an entire industry thinks about attribution and recognition. The transformation happened not through grand gestures but through patient persistence and the simple act of following orders that exposed the truth. The 44 missed calls that Friday morning have become a symbol of what happens when someone who contributes nothing loses access to those who contribute everything. Derek's frantic attempts to reach me that morning were the death throes of a career built on deception. Every unanswered call was another nail in the coffin of his fraud. By the time I walked in at 9 a.m., his fate was already sealed, not by my actions but by his own inability to do the work he had claimed as his own. Would I change anything if I could go back? Not a single thing. Every early morning I spent building those reports gave me the expertise Derek could never steal. Every innovation I created with embedded watermarks became evidence he couldn't erase. Every moment of frustration watching him take credit for my work became motivation to build something he could never understand or replicate. His attempt to diminish me only highlighted how essential my work really was. The future looks bright not just for me but for everyone at Brennan Financial who contributes genuine value. We've learned that protecting and celebrating innovation isn't just ethically right, it's good business. Our profits are up 30%. Our client retention is at an all-time high, and our reputation as an ethical leader in finance has attracted top talent from across the industry. Derek's attempt to destroy the company's culture instead led to its renaissance. So what's the most important lesson from all of this? Never let anyone make you feel bad for excellence. Don't apologize for arriving early, working hard, or going above and beyond. Document your contributions, protect your innovations, and know your worth. And if someone tells you to stop making others look bad by being too good at your job, smile, agree, and let them discover exactly what happens when excellence takes a step back. Sometimes the most powerful response to injustice is malicious compliance that reveals the truth. To everyone watching who has ever had their work stolen, their contributions minimized, or their dedication punished, I want you to know that truth and integrity will prevail. It might take time and the path might be difficult, but those who build their success on deception will eventually face their reckoning. Keep documenting, keep innovating, and keep believing that genuine contribution will ultimately be recognized and rewarded. What about you? Have you ever dealt with a Derek in your workplace? Someone who claimed your ideas, built their reputation on your work, or punished you for excellence? How did you handle it? What would you have done in my situation? Share your stories in the comments below, because every experience helps others recognize and respond to these toxic situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about workplace justice and professional integrity. And please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their hard work matters and that those who steal credit will eventually face consequences. Your support helps these important stories reach people who need to hear them. Thank you for listening to my journey from being an unrecognized analyst to becoming a senior director who helped transform an entire company's culture. Remember that your contributions have value, your innovations deserve recognition, and your dedication should never be diminished. Stay strong, document everything, and never let anyone make you feel bad for being excellent at what you do. The darkness before dawn makes the sunrise that much brighter. And sometimes the best response to being told to dim your light is to step back and let the darkness reveal itself.